decision-making process, that's what you are bound to consider in terms of making this planning decision. So in terms of surety, no, residential zone does not say you cannot contemplate any change of uses. It actually allows for it, but you need to balance all of these competing considerations to make sure it's complementary to the area.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Alexander?
Well, there's about 15 or 16 things they have to meet. And the city is guaranteeing that they're going to ensure the enforcement of those. And like 14 people only, and then along come another 2. Where are they going to wait? Across in the park? I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll take that as a comment. Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Mayor Zeman. I just had a few questions about the suitability of this noise letter. I guess I've read through it. It pretty accurately sets out assigned noise levels for the receptors, but I find that there's generally a lack of substance in the sections following there. There's no estimation of the amount of noise that will be generated. There's been no assessment of noise treatments within the cafe at all. It just says there'll be 14 patrons and 2 staff members in 30 square metres, and that'll probably be under the noise regs. I guess if admin could provide a little bit more background around, I guess, why this was deemed acceptable, and I guess in what situations we would in fact enforce requiring a full model to be developed. Because I guess in my view, this item, one of the main pieces for consideration to me is amenity impacts and noise impacts probably most significantly.
Through you, Mayor Zeman, that's correct. So no modelling has been undertaken in this acoustic ladder. Ultimately, the city's sound attenuation policy does require the full acoustic report, and that details exactly what needs to be included within the acoustic report. It includes modelling and consideration of noise receivers around the proposal. And that is required for this development on the basis of non-residential use, being introduced into the residential area. And there's congregation of people and some amplified music. So based on the applicant's approach, they sought to submit this acoustic letter as one measure to avoid providing the full, not completely avoid, but to avoid providing the full acoustic report at the DA stage due to the costs that comes with that and potential uncertainty as well. So the acoustic letter has been prepared to provide the city with some assurance from a acoustic consultant that based on their desktop review and in considering the built form, the location of the parking and the overall operation of the use, that it is of their professional opinion that it is likely to comply with the noise regulations. When considering that letter, ultimately, and in considering it against our sound attenuation policy and the appropriateness of the use in this location, our position is that a full acoustic report is still required to provide that assurity, and that is why we've resulted in conditioning for a full acoustic report to be provided. However, our technical review of the acoustic letter does provide that assurance that it is likely to comply, and if it doesn't, there would be suitable measures to be able to be implemented to mitigate noise impacts and to meet the assigned levels of the noise regulations.
I guess just to follow up on that, I guess if we're being asked to delay receipt of that report until after the DA is approved on the basis of deferring or avoiding costs to the applicant, am I able to have an understanding of what those potential costs are?
Through you, Mayor Zeman, we can have a look into that and include it in the briefing notes.
I guess one of my main concerns on noise as well would be this probably overlaps with Councillor Castle's comments, from patrons coming and going. Certainly that's been my experience when frequenting North Street store. I think the main impacts are from the crowd noise on the streets. Again, this letter doesn't consider that at all. Would that be a consideration of any future acoustic reports, or are we just looking at people inside the building?
Through Ms. Simon, we'll confirm that in the briefing notes with some further information from our health team.
I guess, had the applicant had any discussions with you about that waiving of condition 3.2 or 3.3, whichever one it was, around restricting queuing outside the premises? Because I guess I found it curious that their noise assessment doesn't include any referral to people queuing outside or any assessment of people queuing outside the building, and yet they want that condition waived.
Through Mesamon, through the application process, we did raise concern with queuing and activity outside the premises, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, are there any further questions? Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in regard to the waste collection, I mentioned the condition recommended requiring a waste management plan prior to commencement. Now that City doesn't offer the commercial waste collection anymore, does the City have any idea on how often rubbish collection would be or for this commercial waste?
Through Mesamon, we do have that information. I know it was infrequent, but we can confirm that with the operator and confirm it in the briefing notes.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from councillors? I've just got a further question. Concerns have been raised about the state of the verge opposite, and I understand there might be some works that are planned to deal with that. Can I just get an indication of whether any of that was going to incorporate parking, noting that cars park on there now, and it's a dust bowl. So can I get an indication of what's intended to happen on the verge immediately opposite this?
Thank you. Through the chair, we are intending to look at options. One, to reduce the dust mitigation that's happening there as a consequence of the city having to save water on that reserve and not reticulating essentially or watering those areas. That has had a consequence. Some of the intention is to see how we can incorporate both parking and measures to capture water and do some essentially landscaping in that space. So looking at both mitigating the dust, using groundwater and stormwater runoff to essentially water plantings, but also incorporate some form of parking in that space as well. So that's the intention, but it will need a little bit of work to consider how we're going to approach it.
Okay, can I just get an idea of the time frame of when you might have some resolution around whether there's going to be additional parking put in there or not?
My understanding that we're looking at some designs at the moment. This is a response to an annual or a motion that was received through the annual meeting of electors. There was a 12-month time frame on it. I can't guarantee what time the designs might be finalised, but I can include something in the briefing notes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Castle.
Sorry, can I just ask a follow-up on that that point? I'm just wondering about how if we are considering a development application that includes the amenity of existing parking available at Menzies Park as part of the consideration, but there is a plan to potentially reduce some of that parking if there's plantings on the verge. How do the two interact?
Through Mayor Cole, essentially sorry, correction, Mayor Simon. I've lost my train of thought. Essentially, we're not considering parking flowing onto that verge area, and that's because under our non-residential parking policy, the proposal does meet the minimum parking standards under the policy. So all parking would be contained on site.
So it doesn't rely on that parking being available?
Through Mesamon, that is correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Are there any other questions in relation to this item? Okay, in that case, we will move on to 5.5, variation of lease to WA Tennis Association at the Robertson Park Tennis Centre. Councillor Alexander, you had some questions?
Thanks, Mayor. Can you just explain to us, why this is a good deal? I'm trying to work out which parts are not being developed and which have been mowed to the standard of the normal park, and the cost currently of $17,000 to the city, and the rent is $11,000, nearly $12,000 to Tennis West, and we're looking at waiving that. Could you just explain to me in layman's terms why it's a good deal for the city, please?
Through the Mayor. So as you're probably aware that the city is undertaking substantial works at Robertson Park. At the moment, the condition of the tennis centre is in a significant state of disrepair. We've been waiting to get funding through the CSRFF funding program that will now allow us to deliver on that program. And as a result of the current state, so basically what has occurred is there has been minimal investment in the centre over the last few years because the city's been working on the development plan to get a coordinated development outcome from there and seeking funding to support that. The tennis centre has come to the city and said, due to the state of the courts, we're seeking a fee waiver until the end of stages 1A and 1B. So 1A is the current works that have commenced on site, which is the development of the 4 multi-sport courts. Stage 1B will be the replacement of 12 existing courts with hard courts, and that will occur from the new financial year. So as part of that, at the moment, they are maintaining a grass area that was former grass courts that are no longer in a state to be used. And they have initially requested that the city take over that work. That was going to come at a cost to the city of about $17,000 per annum to do that mowing, to incorporate it as part of our existing program. And so in exchange, we have suggested that we would waive their current rent if they continue to maintain that, and we'll revisit their lease once the stage 1A and 1B works are complete.
Okay, so what that means is that $17,000, they will basically suck that up by the work they do.
That's correct. And I imagine that they can probably deliver that work at a slightly less cost than the city because of the way that our maintenance program works. We wouldn't just go in and do that specific reserve. It would be part of a larger piece of work, but that is correct.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Councillor Warner.
Sorry if this sounds dumb. Isn't that already part of their lease, though, that we say that they're not required to rectify any damage that was present prior to the lease, but surely upkeep of what it was should be part of their conditions of lease anyway?
As a simple answer, yes, but more holistically, that is an asset of the city and it forms part of a broader program. I can provide some further information in the briefing notes.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is 8.1, Governance Framework Review 2024. Are there any questions pertaining to this? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. In this item, it's been recommended that we adopt the governance framework at attachment 1, but it seems to me attachment 1 isn't quite finished. In reviewing the document, I wrote down there were a couple of sections, I think, sorry, I'm just trying to find the page numbers, page 20, page 12 and page 32. There was a comment around inserting the city's vision, quote, and the city's values image, replacing the graphics, and could some text be a table or an image? So I was just wondering if we could get some clarification, please, around whether there's been a version control issue or we can expect an updated document in the briefing.
Through the chair. So what probably will need to happen is we can amend the recommendation. So typically with corporate documents, the city will put up a track change version of the document. After council has adopted that, then we'll put it to our marketing team and get them to put it into the clean version of the document. So what I can do is insert in the recommendation that council adopts the track changes version and authorises the CEO to finalise the document into its final form.
I guess some certainty around the changes that would be made post-approval in terms of limiting that to minimal changes, graphics, something like that. I'm sure it's understandable the issue of not having a final document in front of us when we're being asked to approve it. So if we could couch it in those terms that do limit the scope of changes after approval, I think that would be helpful.
Through the chair, that's fine. We've got some standard wording that we use for most of our corporate documents. We can include that in there.
Okay, are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, the next item is 5.4, which is Breaker Bar on the portion of Parry Street Road Reserve, 177 Sterling Street, Perth. I had a question in relation to this. I just want to be clear on it. There's no suggestion at all that the actual structure and the way it's constructed, the way it works now is going to change. As I understand it, it's simply a matter of changing the licence by which it occurs. Can I just confirm that my understanding of that is correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. So they have a development approval for the structure, but they had a time-limited licence. And since the change to our vibrant public spaces policy, they're required to obtain a licence for this structure because it doesn't meet the design outcomes of a proposal that could be approved under delegation.
Okay, good. I just wanted to get confirmation because it's one of the prettiest parts of that area. Okay. Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so now we move on to the confidential items. Are there any questions on any of the confidential attachments or any of those items? Okay, in that case, I want to thank the public who turned up tonight and to the 200 or so live stream viewers who are undoubtedly watching at the moment. And I want to close the meeting at 7:27.
I would just like to let you all know that we have had some technical difficulties this evening and the live stream sound cut out about 20 minutes ago. We do have the sound recorded in the chamber, so we will have that uploaded tomorrow morning.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and just to explain, we've changed essentially from the Zoom platform to a Teams platform, which is why the screens look a little bit different. And this was our first time on the Teams with a live stream, and hopefully we'll sort out that bug for the OCM next week. Sophie.
Could you still hear Sophie?
Yeah, everything was really good.
Great. Thanks, Sophie.
I'll be less
Good
coffee
night.
next week. I'll be
A
there
bigger
in person.
sign for that one.
Sorry, Soph, what did you say?
I was just saying I'll be there in person next week because I'll be less coffee by then. I'm willing that.
Yeah,
away.
and no, this is, so Soph has had COVID for the first time, so very sick. And yeah, and Jonathan's got COVID too at the moment, Soph.
That
Yeah, and
sucks.
Manuela's got it for the first time and she's really sick as well.
If anyone is joining online, please drop your name. Okay. I didn't see you last night. I spoke to the town centre planning framework. Now I know. Oh, we're shaping the future. Yeah, so there are like 40 people got like the good consensus on it. It's like 20% like often things so it was just that more like after speech on more activation of the street, like so saying like reclaim that they're saying reclaim that something they're saying it's too narrow, go to the bus lane, make embayments instead, the bus. Yeah, and also we go to super buses. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think that